The first time a guy usually receives flowers is at their funeral. And like, it's heartbreaking, right?
Oh my God.
And is that true? I don't know.
I'm gonna
But
buy
like,
my boyfriend flowers.
buy your boyfriend flowers.
Welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And this is Hayden from the future jumping in to preface today's mini dose. You might recognize our guest, Ben Meyers, from a previous episode all about dating and crushing and relationships. And we just had so much to yap about that I was able to pull out a little mini dose for y'all, where Ben and I talk about stereotypes and misconceptions on men in dating, and Ben shares how him and some of the guy friends he polled on the issue would like to see things changed. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to hear Ben and I chat even more in the future, then comment on this episode and let me know on Instagram, and I'll bring them back on. So hope you enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next one. So to kind of pivot and hopefully not lean too hard on gender stereotypes, but a little bit, because, you know, I'm curious about the male stereotypes and stigma in dating, because I think a lot of my listeners are women and we have our own stereotypes in dating. You know, one we've already touched on, which is like the clingy, you know, that gets put on women a lot just for showing interest. So are there any male stigmas in dating that you'd like to be released from, that you'd like to see be healed?
I mean, yes. You're
like, no, none. We're good.
No, okay. So behind the curtain, like, you posed this question to me and I posed it to like a larger group of guy friends of like, what do y'all think about this? And they threw like so many.
He crowdsourced.
I crowdsourced this information, everyone. I think everything I know is crowdsourced, for the record. And they threw out a lot of really great points that they would like to be released from. And the one that I want to hit on is multifaceted. But it has to do with the pursuer dynamic and expectation on men in relationship. And it is this interesting line where we are expected to be the one to pursue, to be the one who texts, who plan, who maybe pays, not necessarily what I'm talking about here, but they are the catalysts for a lot of the crushing phases of it.
Setting the pace.
And there's come a point where there's this weird line where we've addressed this one of like being too interested and too engaged. Goes both ways, right? That might be less male and more general. But there is this line of showing interest. This might be less stereotypical, but like even like meeting someone out in public and like pursuing that later on, there's a line between being interested and being creepy.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for us to walk.
Yep. Men deal with that. I mean, so much more.
And it's hard for me to ever put any blame in women who've had to deal with that and have to put up with that in so many scenarios. But I do know a lot of guys who get in their head about that dynamic of like, I don't want to be creepy, but I am interested. And sometimes scenarios have played out where the woman's like, oh, I didn't think you were interested, like I was interested and now I'm not. And they were like, well, now what like I was trying, and I was trying not to be too much or in your face or like an annoying man who wants your attention, who feels like they deserve it in any capacity. And it can go too far in either direction.
Yeah, and I want to point one thing out here too, because obviously we're leaning a little bit more on hetero relationships here, but you can also sub in like just masculine and feminine energy here, because if you do feel like you lean a little bit more towards the masculine energy or that initiator dominant type of role, if we're thinking about kind of archetypes or,
Right.
you know, feelings like that. Or if you feel like you have more of that feminine energy that's going to be, you know, kind of following the lead a little more. I think that same thing still applies, because in almost any two-person dynamic, there is going to be a pursuer and a pursuant or whatever, you know? So that kind of, I think when we're talking about these male stereotypes, it's really talking about that pursuer role, which is just associated with more masculine energy.
That's the more archetypal
dominant
spot we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guy friends I have really struggle in it. Because like zooming out, we just went through kind of a while ago, but like a huge Me Too movement, and just a big feminism movement in general. And if anybody is paying attention at all, they are listening and like taking more of a back seat, as opposed to more, I don't know, old chivalrous, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Like behaviors that are like, I'll pick you up tomorrow night at 7.
Chivalry that was like now with more boundary, like, oh, just a little controlling, like
yeah.
Because like if a guy told me now, like, I'll pick you up at 7, and like no info on where we're going, or one, I'd be like, do you know where I live?
Yeah.
And I would also be like, it would be weird.
Super
it would
weird.
Be like, yeah, it would be very, very controlling. And at one point that was the norm. And it's like, we can start to see how it's like, it's decreasing over time. It is more equal. It's more common now probably for
which is great,
people to split on the first date or something, like, you know, but a lot of this still exists. And what I'm hearing you say is like, part of what I hear, like the antidote to what you're saying is just as like the equality of the sexes continues to rise, and on women too, or, you know, more of the feminine in the relationship, like not having as much expectation on, oh, well, did he pay? Did they, you know, drive?
Money and status came up a lot in my guy group too.
Yeah. Hold the door. Yeah. Like, what is his shit together? Like, is his life together?
His shit together.
You know, and like some of those expectations I think are going to have to shift, because I can just say, and I've told you this, like, you know, when I'm talking with my girlfriends, it's like trying to figure out, oh, was it a date or was it, well, did he pay? You know, did he plan it?
Yeah.
Did he go up to you and ask for your number?
Yeah.
Did you ask for his? You know, it's like when we start to maybe unwork some of those expectations for how to define what's going on.
God,
like, is it romantic or is it friendship? Usually the stereotypes are the things that help kind of draw that line a little clearer.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure. And guys like to be pursued. We like to be chased after too. It's true.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a cliche thing, but like some internet thing of like the first time a guy usually receives flowers is at their funeral, and like it's heartbreaking, right?
Oh my God.
And is that true? I don't know. But
buy
like,
my boyfriend flowers.
buy your boyfriend flowers. Plan a date for him. Buy dinner for him.
Yep.
Like, it goes so far for us. Men don't often know what it's like to be loved in that way in a relationship.
Yeah. Nurtured. Yeah, cared for. This is making me, maybe I'll edit this out, but this is making me think about Pookie and Jet.
Yeah.
Have you seen?
Yeah.
Pookie and Jet. I was doing a deep dive, and
I haven't done that yet.
I highly recommend. It's honestly kind of soothing. I started really feeling calmed by them, but a lot of the comments were people being like, find you a man who like treats you like Jet, you know, treats Pookie and like gives her gifts and just talks about how beautiful she is, and just like is, you know, very stereotypically like he is the caretaker and he's like, you know, kind of worshiping her. And it would be hard to imagine this couple as their internet personality switching roles, like her being like, Jet, you look gorgeous today. Like, what are you wearing?
Yeah.
It would be a little bit like jarring. Because they are just kind of this stereotyped, they're very emblematic of those roles. And a lot of the people in the comments are like, I need this. I need to find me like a man like that. So there still is a very pervasive thought that like that's the goal.
Yeah. Where's my jet?
Where is your jet?
You know, like that's what, like, guys love that.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting point here to talk about of like maybe likely we do reach that further on in the relationship, more equality in expression of love, let's say. But in the dating phase, I would say it's really one-sided.
Yep.
And the interesting part, like going back a bit, is like talking about this random example of like, I'm going to pick you up at 7. I could talk to so many of my lady friends and they would say, that's hot. I like that.
Yeah.
Not everyone. That's not everyone's speed, but it's like, to me in my system, I'm like, okay, what the fuck do I do? Like, where do I line? Because I'm not that aggressive as a dater in that capacity. I like to ask more questions and see where they're at, as opposed to that sense of confidence.
And that's what's authentic for you.
That's what's authentic for me.
What's going to find you the right match.
Mm-hmm.
And also, not everybody would be like this, but we can bring back attachment a little bit in terms of like, oh, I'll pick you up at 7. Like, oh, that's so hot. I want that. You know, is it because it's more soothing? It's more predictable. Oh, he really likes me because he's spearheading all of this. I don't have to question it.
And this is like, okay, we're going back even further. Is like, this is the
full circle
authenticity versus the game. Because if I am really forward like that, to a degree, I'm not playing, or I'm making very explicit moves.
It's like almost like that, you know how everything, if you get on each side of an extreme, it just comes back to a circle.
Yeah.
It's like that thing of like, that's either not playing the game or playing the game so hard. Like, it's like you are acing the game, or it's like one hair from tipping over to not playing it at all.
Yeah.
And being way too forward.
Yeah.
And I agree. Like, I think for men in particular, it can really be a minefield at the beginning because there's more risk involved if you are expected to be the one that initiates. There's still a lot of anxiety being like, you know, from my perspective, being like the female in those dynamics.
Of course.
There's still a lot of anxiety, but I don't have as much risk because I don't really have to initiate for things to happen. And I'm sure a lot of relationships have dissolved because one guy is not as much of the initiator, doesn't want to be dominating. Maybe it's just not authentic to them. And the girl maybe would, but is thinking, well, that's not how it goes. And if he's not initiating, he's not into me. So it doesn't go anywhere.
If he wanted to, he would.
If he wanted to, he would.
And what a like hot button statement that I have so many mixed feelings about. And I don't know if I can even get into them.
You're like, you just leave it there.
I might just leave it there.